parsing is a cheat code to feel like your time's being spent more meaningfully and to do things that are more likely to change your beliefs in ways that will help you in the real world too. I want to talk a little bit about what kind of people I've met trying to play at a high level. I've met people who work in the energy sector that are superintendents at oil sites. I've met delivery drivers. I've met scientists researching genetics. I've met investment bankers, big law lawyers, McDonald's employees, programmers at the best and the worst companies, police officers, full time criminals, drug dealers, everything in between. And you can learn a lot from meeting a large breadth of people, especially if you're honest. You're honest with each other because you can actually communicate things that will change the beliefs you each have about systems and reality itself. Now, how does this relate to parsing? I don't believe a whole lot of things are just true across the board for everyone. But one of them is that if you work with people who are passionate and they're passionate about the same things as you, and you're trying to achieve some goal together, that is a life hack to spending your time meaningfully. I think there's only other couple other life hacks. Truth. Focusing on truth will make your life better. It will also lead you away from following others, which is a mistake. And finally, I want to say that things that are short lived are often, by their very nature, not serious and not meaningful. There is not a whole lot of very short experiences that actually matter. You may project emotions onto them, feel like they compelled you, but in general, things that happen over long periods of time are far more consequential than things that are short lived. It's very hard to find a group of people in World of Warcraft that is able to work together across large spans of time without being focused on the game. And the only real way to be focused on the game is to have some method of deciding if you're doing better. Now, there are people who will show up to raid and wing all their strategies and not do very good and have a lot of fun. These players used to be called ret paladins in classic WoW, and a lot of them are having fun. But this is not a very sustainable strategy in life, and I don't think it works out for people very well. And I also think the notion that you can play with a whole bunch of people and get drunk and high every raid and raid log with them and have a fun for a couple hours a week and have a meaningful time is kind of ridiculous, because guilds like that, they putter out eventually. They don't have a long-term vision. There are guilds that do actually do that and live for a very long time, but they require the leadership to be very, very focused on maintaining a community. And it's not something that will happen on accident. Whereas if your guild is incredibly highly performant and that is exactly what you laser your focus onto, as long as you do that and you respect the people you play with, that alone can quite likely lead you to a very meaningful path, and it can make you feel better when you play the game. I think that this issue of everyone wanting to be mediocre and say that caring about your performance is pathetic is very pathetic. I think that people have this strange thing where they don't want to bet on themselves. They don't want to try things that are wild. They don't want to see if they can get something to improve. They want to pretend that they can take very little actions and that they'll very slowly build up some kind of meaningful result in their lives without having focus on it, without putting actual attention there. And I don't believe that this is possible. I don't know pretty much anyone who really, really loves the game that isn't serious about either their PvP performance, their parses, maybe they're into speed running, or I mean, it could even be something like getting achievements for real. That works too. Or potentially running a guild and trying to make it live a very long time. Although that usually doesn't work long term. You need to have stronger motivations than an ego type one about having an organization, or it won't last into the future, at least in my opinion. I've made many guilds in the past, and I used to have this belief that the way you can get a group of people to work really good together and be friends is you can very slowly integrate members one at a time, and you don't have to really push. You just slowly will amass a friend group, and it'll last through the ages, and we can simply enjoy each other's company. That was the first way I tried to make a guild, and it was an insane amount of work for myself, and I would say it kind of worked. That guild still exists, and I have nothing to do with it at this point. I had some major disagreements with people who were in it, and I would say that the strategy I used was really bad because it was really nested in people pleasing, I would say. If your true goal is just to have people stick around and like each other, it's actually you're trying to optimize for being a people pleaser and for people trying to tell you that they are pleased with you. And this doesn't work. Whereas when I made the very last guild, it was all about parsing and performance, and we were super tight with each other. And it went from never having played before. I made the guild during the beta for Wrath to being a top 30 guild in the matter of a couple weeks. And it kind of changed my beliefs about reality. You can very quickly pull off things that feel meaningful if you put the focus on the right stuff. And in the case of parsing, the focus wasn't on being toxic or anything. It was people need to play certain classes. And certain classes have certain things they need to do on certain fights. So that could be getting debuffs at a certain time. Or in the case of Death Knights, which are half the raid, they need to use their CDs in a particular order and activate Gargoyle at a particular time. And so that's what my focus would be on, be talking to Death Knights and Warlocks about how they can time their stuff better, finding weak auras, encouraging them, and letting them know that it's okay if sometimes you play in a way that's bad for average case DPS, but maybe gives you a chance to get a higher parse. However, somebody who performs less good on average would maybe not be given that same consideration. So if you're one of my very best players and you're like, I want to go for a 100, but that means I have to play a little stupid, go ahead. And it's nice that they were able to request that from me, and I was able to give that to them. But it didn't have to do with me being nice. I mean, really, that was a veiled demand of theirs that I respected because what they offered to the team. And this actually made a very respectable and stable relationship. And we got along very well, all of us. And eventually I actually canceled this guild. I didn't like Ulduar. We did one Ulduar raid and I canceled the group. I was like, I am done with this. I do not like it. But people still hung out for months after that. We were very tight. Even though the vision was dead, the mission was over. But in just that first phase of Wrath, we got very, very tight simply from taking the game seriously. Now, you could say that maybe we had a good culture or some other stuff, but this is all really BS, and people just project it onto what they're observing because there's not really any guild that you're going to join where the GM thinks that they're toxic and trying to like torture people all the time. And anybody that is a toxic loser isn't going to think they're a toxic loser. They're going to say something like, I'm honest. I'm just telling the truth. I have freedom of speech. I'm just speaking my mind. And they're going to say all sorts of ridiculous excuses because everyone is the main character in their head and they're the good guy. No one is even the anti-hero. They're all heroic. And this means that you really do need a vision. You always do. You can't just let things slide by or you're going to waste all of your time. And if you go and decide that you want to accomplish something in particular in WoW, whether or not it has to do with parsing, and you go after it, you will have a much more meaningful experience, but you'll also run into people that you enjoy spending time with. You can't have your goal be something silly though and very ephemeral. Like, I want to spend my time with people I like. If that is the thing you make your goal, you will almost certainly not attain it. And that might sound ridiculous, but how many of you viewers have actually been in the same guild for years and years and had that be your primary goal? I would say people who say, well, I just want to play the game and hang out and like have a good time, not deal with toxic people. Like, hey, sure, but I've never met somebody like that like really has been playing with the same people for a long time. It's just not an actual sustainable vision. It'd be like saying I want to start a new nation and the primary premise of this nation is we're going to be nice to each other. Like, does that really mean anything? You know, when people are rude, they're going to think they're being nice in their head. You need a clear vision. It's got to be defined. This is why you should play with sweaty people, and you do want to be sweaty. When I ran really good groups, I let almost anyone join. You had to be the right class, but even if people didn't have experience or gear, it really didn't matter. All that mattered is that they bought into the vision. And the vision at the time was we're going to get really high parses. And at another time, the vision was we're going to run very quick runs. And when I first started making guilds, the vision was bad ones, like we're going to get along. And that didn't work. Or we're going to have a lot of fun together. And that's not sustainable. What I would say usually happened there was everybody in their head that's in a guild will think that they're being fun, not toxic, and then you'll have to moderate it as guild leadership. But if instead the mission was about accomplishing stuff in raids, that actually makes the environment much less toxic, because if somebody is toxic and they scare a member off, no matter how good they are, they're not worth having. Like I can assure you that the people that play with the very best players in the world are great to be around. They're super pleasant people. Could you imagine how stupid it would be to take a player that does 5% more DPS than another player, but once every 4 months runs off one of your recruits? It would be insanity. And people do not do that. Trying to achieve high performance naturally makes people more cooperative and get along better. And trying to achieve low performance naturally makes people not have to cooperate. It's the exact opposite of what a lot of people would think. But I really don't know why they wouldn't see that. Isn't it obvious? I mean, most people be like, I'm super dispassionate about my job and no one cares and they do everything stupid. And we'll understand that that's a terrible environment to be in. And when you're a child, you probably had dreams of doing a lot of work and accomplishing big things, maybe on your own or maybe with others. But it was probably about things and ideas. It wasn't like about sitting on a beach and stacking checks or like getting drunk with strangers on the internet. You should really try taking your time seriously in the game and outside the game too. But for some reason, people don't seem to want to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons that SOD sucks. It's catering to an unsustainable audience. It's catering to low performers and people who don't care about the game and balance and how the classes relate to each other. And I want you to think of massively multiplayer games that are successful, and pretty much all of them, even to an annoying extent, cater to the top. Think StarCraft 2. It's a pretty dead game, but it's been around for a really long time. Or StarCraft 1. It's more alive than StarCraft 2, and it's super catered to the elites. What about CSGO? Or pretty much any really big, massively multiplayer game. It's not catering to people who want to have short, ephemeral experiences and get drunk with strangers. It's just not. It's not sustainable. It's a stupid audience to cater to. And I think that that's the audience everyone caters to. And I'm just not going to cater to it anymore. There are things I want to say in videos that I haven't because I think that it's unpopular with the average World of Warcraft player's opinion. Here are some of them. People think that it would be better to play with toxic people who don't break the TOS than to play with pleasant people who break the TOS. I would rather raid with a gold buyer who takes the game seriously and shows up to raid reliably and respects my time than somebody who follows the TOS and is pathetic and doesn't try and doesn't value their time or my time. Any day of the week, I would rather play with people who are nice to me, even if they're very mean to others. That's maybe a little more reasonable to be not super happy about, but you'll see this in guilds. People will allow their guildies to steal from people outside their guild. I probably wouldn't allow that, but I do understand it. And then people will talk about other ways that you could potentially break the TOS. It could be, oh, I don't know, GDKP maybe. I would much rather somebody have bought all their gear in a GDKP and they're a cool person than some casual who's like, hey, yeah, sorry, I'm 11 minutes late to raid, just I had to put the kids to bed. It's like, no, I'm sure you could have found a way to manage your time better, and I value my time, and I don't think your time is more important than mine. And I don't care that you have a kid. There's plenty of people I play with kids that are able to properly manage their time. And I don't know why this is such a ridiculous belief. Another one is almost all content creators and elite performers in raids buy gold. Almost all of them. Soda got caught. Many other people have been caught. If you watch almost any streamers, they are stupid and they go to their mailbox and don't think that they're on stream, and you'll see the here's your payout for a GDKP. Now, it is actually true. If you go to GDKP and you don't collect your gold, Gargle will auto mail it to people. But a lot of people who run GDKPs are short sighted, and so they actually won't mail you your gold if you don't collect it at the end of a raid. And so, almost for sure, if you see somebody that has a GDKP payout in their mail, they bought gold. That is what I believe 100% of gold purchases say. But no one says this. I think Kargaz is the only person I've ever seen admit to buying gold. And he did it on a podcast, and the other three content creators kind of like freaked out when he did it. I don't know why everyone is so scared to say things that are obviously true. I don't think that, like, for myself, for example, anybody that's this deep into the video is particularly likely to never watch me again over any of this. If you think logically, that is. But people don't think logically, and I think they scare the crap out of themselves, and they just want to say ridiculous shit all the time. I don't like it. I understand why they do it. They think that if they don't, they'll hurt their livelihoods. But I think that you should have respect for yourself and your time and spend it on things that are meaningful. And I imagine if you look back on your past, the things that are meaningful usually involved being highly passionate about them. And they probably took place over protracted periods of time. And likely you weren't being led around by somebody else. You were self-directed. And I don't know why this is not what everybody's trying to do with their time. If you went on the Reddit for Classic WoW, you'd get the impression that the way to be successful is to not do anything, to show up to raid, pray you'll kill some bosses, and then insult everybody who does better than you. And if you do that in the real world, which most people do, most people are very unsuccessful in the real world, it will lead you to being broke. I just don't get it.